that you have been talking about the thread of love and redemption from eternity past to eternity future. And I have come to share with you my part in the story. My name is Ruth. I am so pleased to be with you this morning. I'm an old woman now, but the memory is as fresh as if it happened yesterday. Will you take a moment to reminisce with me? Yes? The thread of redemption. Oh, isn't God so good? How God orchestrates all of the details of our lives and weaves them together into a beautiful tapestry. I was just a teenager when it happened. And I have to admit, I was a little bit boy crazy. So when we saw that some neighbors were moving into town, I had to notice there were two good-looking guys. And they were so different from the guys in my hometown. You see, I am Ruth of Moab. And these were people from Bethlehem that had moved into our village. Now it's ironic because Bethlehem means house of bread. And yet there was a famine in that land. They had to leave and come across the Dead Sea, moving east into my land of Moab. Now you may know the Israelites and the Moabites were worst enemies. They had been at war throughout all of our history. So for them to come from Bethlehem over to Moab, you knew that it was bad. But here they came, a dad and a mom and these really handsome guys. They were about my age too. Oh, they had black curly hair and olive skin, and they had muscles where I didn't know you could even have muscles. Oh, they were amazing. Now, my parents had warned me and told me their family was so different than my own. You see, my father was, well, pretty harsh and actually drunk most of the time. And my mom, well, she was just tired. She worked hard all day and into the night, taking care of my 5 brothers and me. So when she would find me, I really tried. I really tried to do my chores and do what I was told and be a good Moabite girl. But sometimes she would just find me standing outside, gazing up at the clouds, kind of lost in my own little world. And she was less than gentle when it came to my discipline. I loved my family, but there was something special about these people that had moved in next door. And so I got it into my head one evening, and I took all of my things out of my basket and loaded it up with dried meats and some fruit and eggs from our chickens. And I took it over, I snuck over with my welcome basket. When I arrived at their home, something was going on. I wasn't sure if I should interrupt or not. It seemed to be a beautiful thing, having something that I was not familiar with. It was just about dinner time. And I saw the dad doing something, lighting some candles. So I wasn't sure if I should go in. But as soon as I had arrived, The door opened and there was Naomi, the mom. She welcomed me with open arms. I gave my basket, but it was me who found the welcome there. They invited me into this close circle of family that was in the middle of this beautiful thing that was happening. Let me tell you about it. Elimelech, the dad, had lit the candles and was singing a song. As he moved his arms, the fragrance of the candles from the smoke was rising up to heaven. And he sang. He sang the most beautiful song to their God. Now, I neglected to tell you that in my family, our religious practice was idols. We had idols made of wood and stone, and we hoped that those gods would bring us luck. We hoped that they would show favor. But I knew there was something more. And so I watched with intrigue as Elimelech motioned. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And then, to my utter amazement, the mom, Naomi, and the two boys repeated the line with such beauty. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. I knew then that there was something special about this God that they served. And I learned about the God named Yahweh, a God I had never heard of before. And it was a God who seemed to love and to care for his people. I was intrigued by this Yahweh and listened as Elimelech told the story of Moses, a man who was obedient to Yahweh, and to a miracle when he tapped the rock and water gushed out. They were stories that I had never heard before. I sat amazed to be a part of that family. And then I noticed that it had grown dark. I had to hurry home to my own home. And what I heard from the background was Naomi. And she said to Mahlon, the oldest of the two boys, "Be a gentleman, get your sandals on and walk her home." Oh, I was so thrilled. And so we walked home, we began to talk, and by the time I got home, I was determined I was going to marry that man. And so we waited, and our friendship grew and blossomed. A lot happened in those next couple of years as I was becoming a woman, as Mahlon and I were becoming closer and closer. Elimelech, the father, he died. And he left Naomi to be a young widow, now raising these two growing young men. Chilion, who was the brother, married one of my best friends, Orpah. And oh, it was so neat to see their wedding. And at long last, Mahlon finally asked for my hand in marriage. My father said yes, and it was a mini miracle of my own that I clung to. We were married, and we all moved into the same household. Naomi, myself and Mahlon, and Chilion and Orpah, all under the same roof. It was like a dream come true. I now had the sister that I never had all of my life, and we became so close. But best of all, I was able to live under the teaching and training of Naomi, my mother-in-law. Oh, she taught me so much. She taught me about needlework and crafting. She taught me how to cook and to garden. She was always sharing her faith about Yahweh, a God who loved me, a God who loved me. Unfathomable. And she would say, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. She would say, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, and honor your father and your mother. She taught me so much from sacred scripture. She would say, you shall not covet what others have. Naomi was a wonderful mother-in-law, and together we lived and grew under the same household. It made sense then that I came to my own faith in Yahweh, the one true God. I had put away my idols. They were nothing to me. Instead, this God who loved me, I fell in love with. I love you, Lord, and I lift my voice to worship you. Oh, my soul, rejoice. Take joy, my King, in what you hear. May it be a sweet, sweet sound in your ear. I was so grateful for this newfound faith when the devastation came. In the same week, both Kilion and Mahlon died. I cannot tell you the grief, the sorrow, the devastation that we felt. Now 3 widows in the same household. What were we to do? I don't know how it is in your day, in your time, but in Moab, in my day, it was not a pretty picture. A widow was either taken advantage of or totally forgotten. We lived destitute lives, and so we feared what would become of us now. We knew that God was faithful, and yet why would each of us lose our husbands? It wasn't long after that until Naomi began to pack her bags. She was closing up the house and said she was returning to her homeland in Bethlehem. The famine was over, and there was nothing to keep her in Moab. It made sense. And so she packed her bags, and Orpah and I talked amongst ourselves. We too must go. We must go with Naomi and care for her and live with her in Bethlehem. And so the 3 of us set out, bags in hand, ready to go to what they had called the Promised Land. We came to a crossroad, and at that place, Naomi stopped. She turned to Orpah and I and said, go back. Thank you for wanting to come with me, but there is nothing for you there. Even if I were to have a baby boy today, would you wait for him to grow up to be your new husband? No. Go back to your people. Go back to your land. Find someone who will care for you. It was a terrible decision, and yet her arguments were solid. And Orpah decided to go back. What loss for me. This sister that I had found, now returning to our homeland. But I could not go. I had to stay with this woman who had taught me so much, who had shown me the love of Yahweh, who had cared for me like her own daughter. And so I gave her my solemn covenant. I took her 2 hands in mine and said, Naomi, do not persuade me to go back to my homeland. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and I will be buried there. May God punish me ever so severely, if anything but death separates you from me. She accepted my covenant, and she embraced me and welcomed me as her daughter to return to the land of Bethlehem. And so we went. I wish I could say that her faith was restored immediately. She was a woman who, with great faith and joy in God, now was reduced and decimated, hunched over, sorrowful, wondering why had God allowed this. When we returned to her homeland, her friends didn't even recognize her. But God was faithful. God was at work. God had the thread that had begun from eternity past. God was fulfilling purposes set out for us even before we were born. And so we went. Oh, I wish I had the time to tell you how God cared for us. I would tell you how I went and I gleaned in the fields after the farmers had picked their crops. I picked up the leftovers with other widows and other women who needed that extra food. I would tell you how I found favor in the eyes of a man named Boaz. Boaz, who was our kinsman redeemer. It's not something that you know about, I'm sure. It's not something that happens in your time. But in that day, in Bethlehem, a kinsman redeemer would put his covering over you, receiving you and caring for you. And Boaz was that person. I would tell you how Naomi's sorrow was turned to joy, how her devastation became delight, as we, myself and Boaz, were blessed with an infant child. His name was Obed, and Obed became the father of Jesse, and Jesse became the father of King David. And you know the story. Way down the line, King David became in the heritage of Jesus, the Christ, who became our kinsman redeemer, who died on the cross for each one of us. And so to find my place in the thread of history that became a part of the story of redemption is an amazing grace all of its own. And it's not just me. I, Ruth, the Moabite woman, was not one of the chosen people. But God chose me to to be a part of the story. And I tell you now that God has chosen you. God, Yahweh, has chosen you for good things in part of the redemption story. Thou art worthy. Sing if you know it. Thou art worthy. Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory, glory and honor, glory and honor and power. For thou hast created, hast all things created. Thou hast created all things, and by thy power we are created, for thou art worthy, O Lord. Let us pray together. You alone, O Lord, are worthy to receive the glory and honor and power that is due to you alone. Thank you, Father God, Yahweh, God of the universe, that you have chosen us, that you have called us by name to be a part of your redemptive plan and story. Teach us, Lord God, how we can fulfill your purposes as you fill us with your Spirit and walk with us as we go. In Jesus' name, amen. May you know this.